What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday and welcome into the TDR Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Hope you all had a great week. We finished things on a strong note here today. Look, we've been talking about a lot of things, companies, a lot of stuff pertaining to Washington the last couple of weeks. Today, let's bring it back down and get an update with Dan from TheChartGuys. Want to find out, yes, it's been kind of slow bleeding for these cannabis stocks the last couple of weeks, but is now the time to buy and to get in? We'll dive into that later on in this segment as well. We're going to have it right off the top here of the podcast. The latest earnings regarding HITI, all heading in the right direction as this Canadian company continues to impress. So with that, let's welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell on a Friday. Good to see you. How are things?
It's going well. It was I'm pumped to jump into the show.
Yes, and for all of our fans out there that love sports down in Southern Florida, you're one win away from winning the Stanley Cup. Wow.
Yeah.
Big time. Is the city alive right now? Is it?
It's a hockey town. The arena was filled last night for an away visiting game or for an away viewing party. Everything's cup.
Everybody's already saying, what? Okay, we will drop the sports stuff. Hey, it's Friday. That means, and we're bringing him off the top this week because we know how much he follows the HITI story. So let's welcome in Guap here on a Friday. Good to see you, my friend. How are things?
Things are good.
What are you spraying there?
Yeah, I'm just lighting the fire up. I'm excited to talk about HITI, but I'm even more excited to talk about Celtics basketball and Broadway shows for the next hour. So everyone settle in. I know everyone hates when we talk about the theater on Fridays, but I'm sorry, guys. It's going to be a few hours.
That
Cats
team
on Broadway.
That team looks unbelievable. Like this series is over tonight in Big D. Like that team is just they are so balanced.
They're cooked.
Luka looked awful the other night. Like
his hip hurt.
He looked like the leg's a little tired. I think it's time for him to go home and needs some help. Kyrie has not shown up consistently throughout the series, but that team is well balanced. Okay, into the wire here on Friday, Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, Anthony Varrell, along with our good friend Guap. And Guap, we're actually going to start with you, knowing it involves the latest earnings regarding HITI, who posted their earnings yesterday. They broke into the black in the second quarter. They reported $171,000 in net income. That's a big note. As much as it doesn't seem like a lot of money, it is net income, which is now in the black, which is great. This has been long awaited, and a turnaround after breaking even last quarter. For the quarter, they reported $124.2 million in revenue. All numbers are in Canadian currency. This was a 5% increase year over year, and free cash flow of $9.3 million for the quarter. I do want to also note, too, their market share grew from 9.9 to 10.9%. So on track, because I know their goal is to get to 15% market share in the Canadian market. I got to ask, with what they continue to build here in Canada, like we all know they're going to be a major player in Canada, but their CEO, Raj Grover, who's actually going to be joining us on the live stream on Monday to talk more about these numbers, has indicated, look, the U.S. market is an important one. Based on what they're doing, all signs say, hey, yeah, they could actually be a player in the U.S. market. Do you think they can be? And if so, like, how do you see that kind of unfolding as they dive into that U.S. market? Something we'll ask on Monday as well.
Yeah, that's the billion-dollar question. We can all speculate. Raj has been pretty quiet about his plans in the U.S. until pretty recently.
Yeah.
But I think it was the plan all along. Like Biggie says, don't show him your next move, right? But he's putting his cards on the table now. Look, they broke even with net income, joining Green Thumb as the only other company, a cannabis company, to do so. So that's notable. And they did it with 28% gross margins. Green Thumb and many MSOs enjoy the 50% gross margins. It's a totally different ballgame in the U.S. than what they're doing up in Canada. So we can't expect them to simply jump into the U.S. tomorrow. A lot of things need to happen. Schedule 3, FinCEN guidance, the exchanges getting more comfortable with plant-touching businesses. But I think the way that they're going to do it is going to be, again, this is when it moves from what Raj says into Guap speculation, okay? So the way I think they're going to do it is going to be different than what the MSOs have been doing. They have small, efficient operations. I think they're going to go after markets that are like mini Canadas. So think Colorado, for instance, where they have a big manufacturing facility. It's hyper competitive. There's been a boom of dispensaries, then a contraction. They could go in there, kind of, not to use words from way back, but consolidate and dominate a little bit, become sort of the Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks of retail there. So I absolutely think the day will come where we're covering high tide on the NASDAQ in the US. But it's just a matter of when, right? We're guessing when it comes to when. But yeah, it's nice to see free cash flow,
Yeah.
income, market share going up, their club members going up. They're going to add, they said 20 to 30 new stores in 24. They've already added a bunch.
I know.
They've got a cap in Ontario. You talked about it on last show, where they have 63 locations in Ontario right now, and they can go up to 150. So if you project that out, they've got $800-900 million in revenue runway just in Canada. And it's been an impressive feat. You see a lot of these retail competitors divesting, going bankrupt, and they seem to be emerging as the clear winners north of the border.
Yep, that's for sure. Well, we're going to learn a little bit more about that story next week, Anthony, when we are in Toronto. We'll be at actually one of their cabanas. But
I can't believe I'm not going. I'm so pissed. I've never actually set foot in a cabana, so I'm excited for that day.
We'll bring it to you, bud.
So I think Guap had a lot of good points, but I completely disagree with him.
In what way?
On coming to the U.S.
Yes, that's
it's. I don't think they're the least bit comparative businesses. You talk about Colorado, but their Value Buds model, I mean, it is Value Buds in the entire state of Colorado. I mean, California, Oregon, Washington. I mean, they could come in. So I'll put it this way: their business in Canada is highly impressive. Raj is obviously an operator. Raj is obviously a disciplined businessman that can create a roadmap, have a vision, and then execute on it. So I think he deserves every merit possible for what he's done in Canada. But the model that they've built in Canada, I don't know if you could bring it to the US and compete, because the markets that you would have to go into already are discount markets. Like I said, those West Coast markets. He's not coming into Florida from retail only and going to compete with Trulieve. He's not going to go to Michigan and compete with Gage. Could he go and buy outfits and go into these markets and build formidable retail-only businesses? Perhaps. But then you're talking about going and raising 9 figures, and then it's going to be dilutive, and there's no real guarantee on being able to compete. I'm curious to talk to Raj on Monday with the points that I just laid out about what their strategy would be to come into the United States, because I think it's a completely different ballgame and a completely different animal. But like I said, winners win. And I mean, he obviously knows damn well how to run and build a business in CPG retail.
No kidding. Yeah. That's the big thing I was going to ask, is like, it sounds interesting, and, it does grab your interest when you look at the way he executes, obviously, in the Canadian market. And, he's explained to us before in the past that, yes, the U.S. is definitely on their radar. They trade on a senior exchange. But the question is, if you are going to go that route, like, how do you basically walk us through what the plan strategy is and how much he can really share? Because it's definitely a very mature market in specific markets right now. And it's a good question to have, but we'll obviously bring that up come Monday.
We'll let Raj answer and share as much as he's comfortable, right? I think what I was doing was speculating. I think the plans they're keeping it pretty close to the chest. But I think there's a couple other kind of a 3-prong attack that could happen along with acquiring retail locations. They have 5 million customers across their CBD and e-commerce channels. So they have a list segmented by state of all these high lifetime value customers that have bought dabs and vapes and bongs. And so I think the partnerships with MSOs might be an interesting way to go about it. Who knows, a reverse merger to get on the NASDAQ real quick because they're already on there. That's another sort of highly speculative option. Yeah. And then there's always the, sort of online only partnerships with private companies as well that try to leverage the data that they've been collecting all these years. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think he's going to lay out exactly how he does it. I'm just speculating as sort of a digital marketing person who knows the company well.
Mungie Boy writes, High Tide is able to turn a profit with 26% margin. When they go in the U.S., I don't see how they wouldn't be able to compete with double margins. I'm not doubting that from an execution standpoint.
Well,
it just brings up the idea, like what markets, it's a very mature and established market in a lot of these states, because whether it's Florida or you said Michigan or like, you know, specific states, even Ohio, Illinois, whatever market you're looking at, there's different companies in different landscapes, but all have major market shares already established within those markets. But what were you going to say, Anthony?
Correct. But I mean, coming into the US and depending wholly on wholesale and having to just leverage retail, you're not going to get the same margin that Trulieve or GTI are cranking out at 50%. It's impossible. Unless you're growing your own cannabis, that's not happening. I don't care where you are. It literally cannot happen. So to say that High Tide's going to be able to come into the U.S. and command a gross margin like someone like Trulieve or someone like GTI or someone like Verrell is outright false. Not saying, like I said, I'm not saying that he can't come here and build a disciplined business and execute on his vision. He's proven that. He's running at a half billion dollar run rate north of the border with High Tide. I give him all the credit in the world for that. But to say that they can come here and pull margins like the tier 1 MSOs purely operating a retail business is impossible.
I think his strategy really as a second, the second mover advantage here is to let the MSOs battle it out and swoop in when the time's right. I think you're going to see more expansion into Germany than you see before the US. They're thinking worldwide. They're leveraging their data that they've been collecting all these years. So I agree with some of the points Anthony's making, but let's see how it all plays out, right?
Mungie Boy then writes, I agree with you, Anthony. My point is High Tide doesn't need to have those margins.
Oh no, they don't. Like I said, I mean, they have a great business. Like his business is one of the most, I would say, investable that you're seeing right now. I mean, it's growing. It's growing. The Canadian market is growing. Like he weathered the storm. He's one of the last man standing. And I mean, that business is going to be around for a while and continue to grow. But the US is a completely different animal.
We're actually going to be interviewing the Attorney General of Ontario next week. Anthony and I will be. His name's Doug Downey. And we're talking about the legal market. And obviously the announcement made that in January about the cap size per license operator increases from 75 to 150 this year. So if there's any questions that you guys want to learn about the Ontario market and what the black market, used to look like, how they're combating against that, and the overall development of the legal market, because let's face it, High Tide obviously built their footprint on the west coast of Canada. And now with Toronto, people don't realize behind LA and New York is Toronto. It is a massive, massive city. And there is as many as, I think, 500,000 to 700,000 immigrants. What are you smiling at?
That comment that says if there's any karma, then Terry Booth is currently selling used cars in the Outback. that is good. That is rich. That's a fucking rich comment. That is good though.
Oh my God.
Khalid, we want to hear more. Keep going.
Anyway. I can assure you Terry Booth is probably worth 9 figures. So he's definitely not selling cars in the Outback, but that's great nonetheless.
Man, you talk about timing. Terry Booth got in at the right fucking time. That's for sure. But there's a name I haven't heard in a while. But like I said, we're to speak to them. If there's any questions, feedbacks, let us know in the comment section below. If there's any questions that you guys want to learn about the Ontario market, lots to talk about. As I said, the emergence of the legal market, how it plans to basically grow and scale, what their main goals are from a government agencies, specifically. And then we also got to talk, I think, a lot about this excise tax and some of the issues that companies have dealt with, but a lot of moving parts within that market. But, the great thing here is that High Tide's in the black. They want to open as many as 20 to 30. And I think that's just getting started with the amount of dispensaries and a big opportunity, I think, within that Ontario market, knowing that a lot of people that were there before had not done it right. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Michigan and what Terrace and Engage are doing and how, unlimited licenses and up to 150, big opportunity for them if they can obviously execute the right way, and which Raj has demonstrated time and time again. So anyway, let's now switch to our next topic, and we move to Washington and another swing and miss for the sector that comes to banking, as the GOP-controlled House committee voted to strip marijuana banking protections from a large-scale spending bill, which was actually sponsored by our good friend GOP Representative Dave Joyce. Anthony, surprised here? I don't think at all. I'm not surprised here, but any insight on what you thought of this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised. It just sucks to see. It's like New Hampshire got shot down yesterday, which we'll get into, which technically was the right move to shoot that down. These cannabis banking provisions got inserted into the bill via Dave Joyce. They got stripped out yesterday. Him inserting them was a surprise in the first place. It sucks, but I mean, am I surprised? No. I mean, I don't think that it had a chance to get through regardless. Cannabis legislation is under fire in Washington from the legislative branch of government. I mean, we have rescheduling moving through DOJ. DOJ is judicial, and then the executive branch obviously oversees judicial. At the end of the day, the only way we're getting meaningful cannabis reform in the next, I'll call it, year, is Schedule 3 or coming from the judicial or the executive branch. Yeah. Legislative, we're just not going to get anything done, and it's a pipe dream to think otherwise, I think, as of right now.
So you think a year, if not, well, we can't put any timelines on. But
well, no. I'm not saying rescheduling is going to take a year.
No, what I was saying,
DOJ's executive, not judicial, so that's even better. Cannabis reform is going to come from the executive branch. It's not going to come from the legislative. It's just not going to get done.
It's nice having friends in high places, as Don Murphy has spotlighted. I mean, Joyce is the head of the Appropriations Committee. He's the head of the Cannabis Caucus. He's going to continue to try to get safe light put into other bills. He's going to continue to say, the direct quote from him, just, because there was some controversy with Do the Right Thing on there. He said, it was withdrawn from the bill, and we'll hope to exercise this on the floor at some time in the near future. It's not exactly a promise or anything. But when Joyce says it versus Schumer, I tend to give it about 100-fold credibility score.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was an interesting conversation we had on Wednesday with Dan Aarons. We talk about Fox coming out, and basically they still highlight cannabis. They were talking about it a couple weeks ago. Clearly, they're starting to ride this train. I think it's actually a good thing that Governor DeSantis has brought it up. Let's face it, what Kim's doing down there, the conversations are being had. And I think this is like incremental steps, as you've indicated in the years past. So let's get rescheduling done. Christopher Brady, yes, Schedule 3 will be done before the election. I'm calling it. I think a lot of people are feeling strongly about that, as the comment section obviously continues to roll on. That's done. What date is it? End of July, you said?
July 22nd.
July 22nd.
Period's over, and that's when you should start looking at cannabis stocks again.
Whoa. There's your YouTube short clip.
I've already said that.
There is your YouTube short clip for today. We will post that tomorrow and hopefully get some numbers on that.
Well, no, actually, that's not financial advice, so don't listen to me. But yes, I wouldn't touch cannabis stocks until we get out of the July 22nd comment.
Okay,
period.
that YouTube short clip just picked up another 8-9 seconds. Anything else you want to add to that clip?
No.
I head to the moon.
No.
Throw your hands up in the air.
But I don't know. It's frustrating because the price action yesterday had everybody pissed off again, with MSOX going down double digits. There's no buyers. It's not that people are selling. It's the algos arbing this shit back and forth to each other, just driving it down. Like, I think the notional volume of all of the underlyings of MSOS yesterday was 14% of their daily average volume.
Yeah.
The market's just dead.
Dead.
I mean, and I'm not saying dead in a dead sense, but it's just not liquid right now. There's no one buying, and smart money is not going to touch this stuff until we get pen to paper with rescheduling or out of the comment period, and we actually see this is going to get done before the election. This is a very simple calculus. Like, if you notice on Twitter, I haven't talked about stocks or price action since the comment period started. Like,
but the interest is still there based on all the topics that you're discussing.
Absolutely, but focus on policy, focus on fundamentals, focus on the things that we can control and the things that should be important right now. Price action, we can't control. It's not important. I mean, granted, it's a number on a ledger that probably makes a lot of people very uneasy. And if it does, get out. But they're not moving anytime soon.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in this limbo and we have a lot of forces working against us, but the story keeps marching forward. I mean, that's all I got to say.
Kevin Fry writes, I'm still adding to my positions. So again, best of luck to you, my friend. But yeah, the interest level is there one way or another. I don't know how you look at it. But one thing's for sure. Washington needs more Dave Joyces when it comes to this industry. Good guy, to say the least. But we have reached out to his team. We hope to have him on the next couple of weeks as well. I think this would be a really good one. We reached out to Don to see if we can get Brian Mast on. I think that would be incredible.
Yeah.
If we bring up the whole DeSantis angle with him being from Florida, that would be a great angle. And you talk about cannabis stocks and maybe next month being an interesting time, to say the least, one way or another. But we have Dan from the Chart Guys coming up to kind of navigate us where we are today, what's happened the last couple of weeks. And then more importantly, as he's indicated, just we need some big news pertaining to this industry. And traditionally, you know, as I said, in the summer months, this industry is pretty quiet. So we will jump into that in just a moment. On to topic number 3 now, and let's move. And this is a popular one. Good interview earlier this week with the Cantrip CEO on Monday, Adam Terry, correct?
Yeah,
Adam Terry, CEO of Cantrip.
That was outstanding. Read his Substack. I subscribed.
I really liked him, and
Hemp-derived smart chemist with a quality drink company, and a lot of common sense when it comes to this hemp-derived stuff. Basically, kind of echoing what we were saying. You thought it was going to be a debate, and you guys were like 90%.
No, he was all for
fertile ground, common ground. It was.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's like I said on the Spaces last week. Like he's just caught in the crossfire. He's a good actor in the space. He's a great example of how you run a business in the hemp-derived space. He's winning. He's winning consumers. He's running his business the right way. It's compliant. He's using naturally derived Delta-9 cannabinoids in his products. Like he's doing everything the right way. The problem is the foundation that he built his business on via the loophole that's in the Farm Bill also is privy to all of these Frankenstein cannabinoids and gas station BS. And it's not a hemp. Like it's nothing against him. It's nothing against Can. It's nothing against the hemp-derived Wana edibles that are going to be launching, as well as the Select line of edibles and beverages that are launching. Like those are quality compliant products.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they are all looped into the exact same bucket when you talk about dealing with intoxicating hemp products, which is why there needs to be, and this is going to be someone's favorite word that's probably watching, bifurcation between the two, with naturally derived and synthetically derived.
Yeah.
The distinction needs to be made.
The thing that pointed out or stood out to me with him and just the way he thinks, it's like with the millennial generation, they're not so caught up in whether it's Democrat or Republican. They just want somebody who's smart that leads the country, right? They're not divided. And when I look at the way he presents himself, I think in a lot of ways, not as much as say, you know, the baby boomer generation, the way we were brought up, but it's like one of the things that he indicated is just like, I'm not for hemp and no to cannabis. I want to obviously, you know, encourage, and I think descheduling should happen for the space. It's like he thinks there's great upside potential for growth from both industries, which is great. And I think a lot of millennial entrepreneurs have that sort of mindset, which is kind of like a breath of fresh air. But I bring him up in the hemp industry because more specifically, Wana Brands announced their entry into the space yesterday. But so this is going to be interesting. Do you see this as a trend happening when you look at some of these brands and companies that are in the cannabis space now jumping ship?
I mean, you look at Select. That's arguably one of the oldest and largest names in vape, owned by Curaleaf. They've pivoted into hemp-derived beverages, as not pivoted, but they've added hemp-derived beverages as well as Delta-9 hemp-derived gummies into their Select offerings online. You now look at Wana, who's one of the OGs in the edible space, part of Canopy USA, that via a partnership with Happy Hemp-derived beverages are launching their hemp-derived Wana gummies. I've got a call on Monday with Joe Hodis, the president of Wana. He'll probably be on the live stream on Wednesday to talk about this partnership as well as the future and why they did this. But I mean, I do see this as a smart business move.
Why do you think they did it?
Not
For numbers,
Why would
obviously.
you not? Why would you not take a house? You know who knows Wana? My mom. You know who knows Wana? My wife. They couldn't tell you what's inside the dispensary or what kind of strains or anything like that. But you know what they know when it comes to gummies, and you know what they think is a safe, established brand? Wana. Now, via Hemp-derived, you can now market online, go DTC, send it through the mail. Like, it's completely legal and compliant. If you're a household cannabis brand in the traditional sense, you should be taking a very, very hard look into this right now and taking it very seriously.
Go ahead, Guap.
Yeah, and they can take credit cards too. It's crazy.
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, for me,
that's a great point.
I would love to. I would have loved to see a lot more brands and MSOs expanding into the hemp-derived market. Perhaps, I don't know, closer to 2018. It feels a bit late to me. But again, I'm just a guy on a podcast shooting from the hip here. I'm just saying.
Oh, you nailed it.
Yeah,
you nailed that. They're very late to this party.
Like make hay while the sun shines, but it feels like we're kind of in the twilight. We're Farm Bill. Look, I'm not going to tell you when that thing's passing or if it's passing with the Miller Amendment, and I don't want to get into the discussion whether or not banning substances and prohibition in the Miller Amendment is the right way to go. I'm just saying the risk is there that a lot of this goes away. And we're not really sure what form that's going to take and how it's going to come out. And so for me, it's like, I can't get that excited. Investing in a low-dose hemp-derived beverage company, like some people are talking about a lot right now, like, yeah, that sounds good. I think reasonably, if common sense prevails, that stuff is going to continue. And I love that as the leading sort of spear in Total Wine and in non-dispensary locations, being the way that cannabis is first introduced to your mom and your grandma. I love that. I want that to continue. I don't think that's a high risk investment if you're investing in a company like that.
Yeah. Anthony Gambino, great question. The Farm Bill was passed years ago. Why did it take so long to go mainstream?
Well, no, I mean, Guap, you're right. I mean, the only reason why I'm not taking $500,000 right now and starting a hemp business,
it's late,
is because you're late to the game. The Farm Bill, I mean, this stuff is going to get addressed. We don't know how it's going to be addressed, and I would completely agree with you. So the guys that are entering now,
and I don't want to be a good actor in a sea of bad ones. Like I don't want to be wrapped up in the crossfire.
So is this a reactive move versus being proactive? Yeah,
of course it's a reactive move. If it was proactive, I mean, obviously, not trying to be negative here, but I mean, Wana and Select, if the writing was on the wall and if they really were paying attention, they should have been in the hemp-derived market 18 months ago. They should have been in the hemp-derived market 24 months ago with naturally occurring Delta-9 products.
So let me go one step further. If it's reactive, like, are there consequences in this? Like, does it?
Well, there's big consequences. There's potential that they've invested this money and then the Farm Bill and intoxicating hemp products get scrapped. Or in this case, intoxicating hemp products get amalgamated with cannabis via rescheduling. And I mean, to be honest, Canopy USA and Curaleaf, they're the big boys in those respective markets. They're going to know how to bring that product in and then sell the product line through, which, I mean, there's not a lot of, like, I could say, existential risk to these business lines to them, because they can tuck them in to their traditional business lines if they needed to. But yeah, I mean, it's you could argue that it is late to the game, and I mean that's what I'm most that's what I'm most interested in talking to Joe about from Wana is why now, when this has been going on for years.
Cookies has been on this for years. Like here in North Carolina, thoughts on synthetic derived cannabinoids aside, and how that's kind of a isomer soup is the 34 flavors of ick is another thing that Adam Terry said in his Substack that made me laugh, like the Baskin Robbins 31 flavors. It's everywhere, and Cookies was on it, and they took a lot of flack for it. But I guarantee you that has been a very profitable line of business for them for the last few years, and they're not paying $280 on it at all. So we can get upset and we can whine, coming from a sort of MSO perspective. But at the same time, they saw the hole and they jumped through it. and it may be closing here soon.
All right, gents. Well, lots of interesting stuff to say the least, but sounds like Tillay is now far behind. You actually brought up some points about Tillay, and they made an announcement 24 hours later, earlier this week.
Yeah, Tillay announced their summer brands
Right.
of infused pre-rolls, twisted vapes, multi pre-roll packs, and then there was one other product in there. I forget. I just read the press release quickly.
All right,
but yeah, I mean, the funny thing was the products they're launching are categories that they've lost over 10% market share in the last 2 years. So, I mean, I'd be watching for that. But Decibel has gone from 5% of the pre-roll market to, I think, 20% of the pre-roll market via infused pre-rolls. So, I mean, it could be a smart pivot by Tillay to start to gain market share back again.
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions concerning that company the last couple of weeks. We'll continue to keep in touch with you guys to see if we can get Erwin back on relatively soon. TDR Trade Black podcast here on a Friday. We got Dan from the Chart Guys coming up. He's been waiting patiently in the background. Yeah. Quick reminder as well, make sure to log on to thedalesreport.com, subscribe to our baked-in newsletter. We also have the link right here in the comment section. Arns, if you could bring that up. But some great reports. We have Terracin, actually, our latest report. We've had a lot of influx of subscribers that are accessing, like, you know, those research reports over the last couple of weeks. Again, the list includes Cureleaf, Marimed, Trulieve, Verano, New Lake, GTI, among others. But Terracin is our latest report that we actually posted. Was it yesterday or today? I forget, but
today.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay, one last subject before we jump in with Dan. We switch now to New Hampshire. I think a lot of people are obviously aware of what's going on here. Everybody hoping in the industry that this would be the 25th state in the country to legalize adult use, which would be a pretty monumental mark for U.S. cannabis and the recreational aspect, knowing that half the country would basically have states of legalized adult use. But that was thrown a curveball yesterday. Anthony, you want to give us an update on what happened and, more importantly, what's next?
So New Hampshire is the live free or die state. And to be honest, after going through the bill, this bill is better off dead.
Why is that?
Granted, because it was completely, it was lunacy. I mean, you were talking about state mandated pricing. There were just tons of things that were wrong with it. Recriminalizing cannabis to an extent.
Yeah.
It's better off. It's better off not getting implemented. It was not going to be beneficial to the people of New Hampshire. Granted, what is a knee-jerk reaction after first hearing this is the fact that it's gotten tabled. The two Republican governors that could potentially replace Sununu want nothing to do with recreational cannabis. It's looking like one of them is going to win. The Democrat candidate is in favor to an extent. So, I mean, I would just kind of crumple up New Hampshire, put it in the back corner, and just let's move on to bigger and better things. Because, I mean, it's 1.3 million person population. And I don't think they get this right anytime soon. And it's not going to benefit any of the names that we really know or are interested in. But would have been nice to have the 25th state approve adult use cannabis.
Yeah, I largely agree. My parents are up in New Hampshire right now, and they've been sending me articles like I wasn't aware. Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. A Democrat, Jared Sullivan, actually said this is the most intrusive big government marijuana program proposed anywhere in the country. He's not wrong. Like I said, I was low-key rooting for this as sort of like an anarchist. I was kind of, this just seemed like a very strange way to do it, and highlighting the hypocritical nature of the federal and state laws. And so I was kind of low-key rooting for it to happen. But hey, it's funny because this state was so smart on booze that they set up these giant discount liquor stores with no sales tax right across the border from Massachusetts. So I remember making that drive with my dad a few times. And, you know, so tax money and liquor store sales were going right across the border to New Hampshire all this time for liquor. And now they're essentially sending all their tax revenue and cannabis revenue across the borders to places like Vermont and Maine and Massachusetts. So it's, you know, make it make sense. I can't.
So besides hopefully one day smoking weed in the state of New Hampshire, what do you do in New Hampshire for fun? I've never been to New Hampshire.
I've smoked plenty of weed in New Hampshire. It's a great place to smoke weed.
Like good cottage country.
The summer, the summers in
beautiful.
If you're growing up,
state.
if you're growing up outside of Boston or New York, my grandmother is originally got the place on the lake up in New Hampshire, and she was coming out of New York City. Think some of those more scenic locations in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or Canada. It's a great place to live in the summer. As Anthony spotlighted, the population density isn't that high. People generally have a live or let live kind of attitude up there, and the fireworks on July 4th are big. I mean, we got a lot of patriots up there.
Great place.
And
nice.
Now I'm just gonna have to drive over to Vermont.
There you go. Which gets a lot of tourists. When I used to follow the slang story when they stepped into Vermont, I could not believe the amount of tourists that they get with the skiing as population on an annual basis.
It's solid. It's solid skiing. It's solid skiing up there.
Yeah.
If you like ice, that's what I grew up.
It's
what I grew up skiing. If you can ski in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, you can
ski anywhere.
The Pow Pow in Tahoe, yeah.
Big shout out to Tara Norman. Thank you for the super sticker that you've outlined. I know there's a few people asking the other day, guys, quit dragging your feet and get to Washington a lot more. We're trying, buddy. We are trying hard and raising basically lots of money. That's the hope and angle, so we can have a little bit more funds to basically go to all these different places. But yes, it's on our radar. We're trying what we can. So any support.
If you donate $3 a day, you can send us to Washington.
Right. How's it already feel if we had a membership for this and charge $69 per month? That would help. But I don't think the audience would appreciate that too much. But it's something that we may need to do one day if we continue to do this. But anyways, regardless, we appreciate everybody for.
We told Dan it was going to take 15 minutes to get.
I know, and here we are, 37 minutes. He's probably ready to laugh.
We are the worst time estimators, but we love talking about this stuff. So, and appreciate everyone in the audience for all the interaction and stuff. We read every comment, especially the negative ones.
Yes. All right. With that, let's bring in Dan from the Chart Guys. Arns, cue up the music. Let's roll. Dan from the Chart Guys. Good to see you. Happy Friday. How are things, my friend?
Things are great. Glad to be back. I'm a big New Hampshire fan. I went there all growing up. Go to the White Mountains, go to Lincoln, the Lost River, Hampton Beach, go skiing on Loon Mountain.
Wow. Yeah. So this is a state that you know well. Good place to be this time of year, I would think. Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I love the White Mountains. That's where I fell in love with nature when I was 4 years old. So That's a spot to go.
Yeah, it's amazing. Always good to get out in nature this time of year and get away from the big city life. But I think that's kind of what people are looking at even after COVID, kind of resetting, saying, how do I want to live? But those are probably some great places. If you can have a good Wi-Fi signal, why would you not want to have the best of both worlds and do that sort of thing? But
we didn't have Wi-Fi back then, and that's how we like it.
Yeah. Good to see you. So we're going to jump into some charts here this morning. But I think a lot of questions people have asked, like, look, this has been a slow bleed, which you've indicated a couple times over the last month, 6 weeks, being in this industry historically. You'd said that you were in cash. This is an industry that, tends to, slow down, to say the least, in these summer months. That we need some big news. We had a couple of decent size announcements, nothing official when it came to rescheduling. So how that all transpires in the fall, we'll wait to see. But here we are now. And I think most importantly, people want to find out, at least learn a little bit more. What are the next sort of moves or education that you can provide? So with that, let's look at some charts and begin with a company that, like I said, we reported off the top, that reported their earnings yesterday, trades on the NASDAQ, which is HITI. So what can you share with us?
Yeah, so I mean, look at the volatility today, and this was what you get when you have a low cap name. Less than $1 million can move the price 15% or whatever it was. But bulls did buy that dip to a certain degree. It's the rising wedge. When you grind up like this and every bull break lacks follow through, you keep an eye out for a rising wedge. That's what we got on the MSOS weekly chart, which we'll look at in just a bit. You break, you go into consolidation. It just shows tired bulls. So we get that bull or that bear break, and I zoom out. And now I go to the weekly chart and say, all right, it's our good friend, the equilibrium. You've got your low, high, higher, low, lower, high, and we're just tightening up. And this is going to break sometime, probably in July, if not, then in August. But again, when you see a lot of volatility in both directions, look for the tightening range. And then the direction that you break that tightening range gives you the next bit of information. So it's a patient waiting game on this weekly chart. But as I've mentioned recently, there's no other cannabis chart that I'm looking at aside from maybe IIPR that has a weekly uptrend. So it does stand out in that regard.
That's notable. Another company I want to bring up, they're kind of a biotech company now, but started with, the cannabis space. NASDAQ traded Cardiol Therapeutics, had some news out actually yesterday, but this stock is actually part of Advisor Shares ETF YOLO. And Dan Aarons was highlighting to us how this has been up over 200% since January. So I think we want to highlight that and maybe get some more information pertaining to it.
Yeah, this is another one where, just to go back to high tide a bit here, you got the weekly EMA 12, which keeps holding, and you look at CRDL, and it's the same thing. So if you want to just keep it simple with, if you're not an expert in technical analysis or trading, you just make the simple statement, we're going to stay in an uptrend if this uptrending line continues to hold as support. And so right now, with that news you mentioned, we do have this big upper wick and that potential volume climax, and climaxes often indicate tops and bottoms, but the key short-term support is this 231 level, which is a little double bottom there. And if that breaks, then it's time for weekly consolidation. And I would then watch what's the response to that weekly EMA 12, which has held the last 3 tests over the last 6 months.
Interesting. Next up, as we stay on the senior exchange train, let's look at Canopy.
So Canopy is in fade mode with most other things. We just set a new resistance with a little daily lower high at 785. So that's the most important short-term resistance for me. The low that we hit was 677. So I just marked those 2 levels and we're trading sideways within it. And I'm not going to get any new information unless we break resistance and confirm a daily uptrend, or break support and hit fresh lows. And so those are the only 2 levels I care about. Again, as a trader, I go from trading CGC many times a week during this volatility. I haven't touched it in over a month, because you see that the range of each day is minuscule. It's a pie. If I want to get my piece of the pie as a trader and I got a giant pie, it's easy to get my piece. If it's a really small pie, it's very hard to get my piece. So you have to have that range in volatility, and it's just absent with the shrinking volume over the summer.
So what would you need? What would you need to see to validate you getting back into the name? A confirmed uptrend?
I just started scaling back into some US cannabis. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But for CGC, I need volume. As step number 1 would be hold 677 and 785. That confirms a daily uptrend. That would be the first time since we topped out on the official Schedule 3 headline. That would be the first time people say, hey, pay attention. And I would say, okay, I'm going to pay attention. And then zoom in from there and look for any potential trade setups.
Good to know. Okay. So even if we see less and less volume throughout the summer, do you see this as a continuing downtrend, or do you think that we hover around like the numbers and I guess where we're at right now?
Well, I mean, it's not a good spot to be in the sense that the broader market is extremely strong at all-time highs. And again, if we pull back and have a red month in the broader market, it will add sentiment downward pressure on this sector. And IWM has been struggling. The Russell 2000 is certainly not performing. This is the weekly chart on IWM. And I use this as a gauge because this is your risk on, it's one thing for Apple and NVDA to be going up, but your risk on stocks are not performing. And so that's one thing to note. The range that we break, I should say the direction that we break this weekly range in IWM will have some significant implications for the second half of the summer. But it's just not a good spot to be in, because if you don't get a headline, and if a strong market is not going to see prices appreciate it, then it's just gravity that's going to lead to the slow bleed. But why I'm interested in entering back some positions, my mindset yesterday was, if we break $7 today into daily oversold conditions, I'm going to begin scaling back some position. And that's, back here, I sell some position here, I sell position on the official headline, back to all cash. And again, it's always easier in hindsight, but it's just selling euphoria and rebuying fear. And, that's the name of the game, big picture. And so we get to daily oversold. We're down 34% in the last month. And I just start nibbling a little bit back. I'll re-enter a quarter of what I sold. So I have a little bit of skin in the game and I start paying attention. And granted, timeline wise, as Anthony said, I'm still looking end of the summer. But if we get, we can definitely see short-term climaxes in terms of a short-term bottom and a little bit of a bounce. And with my style of trading, let's just say I'm personally trading TCNNF and GTBIF. But if I were buying MSOS under $7, if I sell half at $7.30, I stick a break-even stop at $6.70. And, if it stops me out, I don't lose anything. And if it doesn't, then I have a position. And that's generally my mindset with trading. So just dipping my toe back in a bit because it's fear and sold in euphoria. So I'm going to keep trying that age-old strategy.
There you go. Shout out to Henry Lopez. Thank you for mentioning to people to smash that like button and leave some comments. Do you guys agree with Dan from the Chart Guys based on his analogy? Leave any feedback, any questions, and if there's any charts that you want us to cover too. But greatly appreciate if you could smash that like button. Very much appreciate the support. Okay, we just covered MSOS. Next, I think it is actually TrueLeave, if I'm correct, that we brought up.
Yeah, and just one more note on MSOS. Got to turn $8 back into support. Look at how many times we bumped our heads here where just can't get over it, can't get over it, can't get over it, leg down. And that's the scales between supply and demand. They're balanced right there. So someone's going to win, demand or supply, and it's supply. And we see another leg down. And so that's now the clear line in the sand where a bear does not have anything to worry about if $8 is resistance. So,
man, it's going to be telling with this stock and how it performs in the next few months. So much at stake. But anyway, continue on with your thought, Dan.
There's a little bit of relative strength in TrueLeave and GTBIF just in comparing the charts. I mean, let's just pull them up and put them next to each other. On the left is TCNNF and on the right is MSOS. And you can see sideways with a clear leg down versus a bounce and testing the low. And, if MSOS were doing the same thing, we'd be testing 752 support right now. And so that's an easy way to distinguish that there's a little bit of relative strength there. And so if I'm looking at TCNNF, I just mark where we topped out. 985 is resistance. The bulls are attempting to defend 850, 860 as a range. And, same thing with GTBIF. I'm going to pull that up now on the left here. We're not hitting fresh lows. We're trying to hold the recent lows. It's a very different look than MSOS. And GTBIF divided by MSOS shows us that it is, in this moment, approaching the strongest it has ever been as far as relative strength. I mean, it's up there. This is the weekly chart, and we can see, it's been relative strength the majority of its life. When TrueLeave got its spotlight because of the vote, coming down the pipeline, it saw some relative weakness, but it's right back to testing the strongest it's ever been compared to MSOS. And again, MSOS, fresh leg down. GTBIF does not have a fresh leg down at this point. So that's one of the reasons that I'm focusing. And, everybody will point to the fundamentals, which are very likely the reason that we are performing and some buyback and things like that. But that is why my focus right now is TrueLeave for the Florida vote, GTBIF for best in class.
Totally. And you're starting to see, I think, more and more about how these two companies are performing differently from the other space. They're separating themselves, which you're starting to see with regards to the industry. But very notable information. And thank you for outlining that. Last thing I wanted to bring up was actually Ethereum. What's it been? About a month, 6 weeks now since the ETF was passed. But I wanted to bring up that chart and see what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's just the good old-fashioned longer-term tightening range where, we had that nice spike up on the headline, and then we get the information, and it's going to take a while until there's actually trading, and we know that you need the actual trading for the underlying dollar volume to go into ETH, but it's just I'm anticipating the most likely scenario through June into July is just going to set a higher low eventually, just keep tightening up, and that's, you could look back to previous summers in crypto and cannabis, and that has definitely happened. Like, this is ETH last May, June, July, sideways. And so watching for a wider sideways range, but again, something very similar.
Good to know. Thank you, sir. I appreciate we missed you last week, but this is always helpful information, but at least have a better idea as to where we're at now and what we can basically plan, or at least know a little bit of guidance and navigation heading into these summer months. But telling times, to say the least, over these next few months. And historically it gets quiet this time of year, but I think this year is a little bit different come fall time than previous years. how, leading into the federal election, this is going to be a hurricane in so many ways. But if anybody wants to learn and guess, sort of understand about what's next, where do they follow you again, Dan?
At ChartGuys on Twitter, but go to chartguys.com. Tons and tons of free content.
Okay.
Starting out, free intro course, all that stuff. And go outside for the summer, enjoy the summer, come back towards the end of the summer, start paying attention again.
Good point. That is well said. Up in Canada, we always like to practice hockey 24/7 around the season. And the coaches say, stop playing hockey in the summer and go play baseball, live on the beach. And that probably is the same sentiment we could say about cannabis investors. Just turn your computer off, enjoy the time, and we'll see you back post Labor Day, right?
Sounds like a plan.
Dan, appreciate your time.
All right. Have a good day, guys.
Take care. I think we lost Mr. Varrell, but that's okay. I think we're going to wrap things up as this podcast is at the 50-minute mark.
Did Anthony go to the Biden rally today? Is that where we lost him?
I think he's dealing with some HVAC issues and some guys were pissing him off inside of his house. So I think he's going to lay down some who knows, but regardless, man deserves to find out what's going on, but good week to say the least. Very interesting week.
I can mic drop another week for sure. I would just say, just to tell a quick story about my investing journey, just to wrap things up.
Yeah.
My grandmother, the OG Diamond Hands DCA index fund investor who started investing in the 60s and 70s. My mom continued that spirit. If you're overexposed to cannabis, it's going to be a wild ride, but it'll pay off in the end, I think.
That's right. It's going to pay off in the end, Guap.
I bought Apple in 1998 when the Apple computers were still beige, okay? And I wrote it up and down in 2000. I wrote it up and down in 2009, and I sold it for a 50x at the 40th anniversary. Steve Jobs had died years before. I thought they were stagnant. There was no innovation. I held for 20 years and sold too early. So the moral of the story is wait for theses to play out. I mean, cannabis is going to take over the whole world. We can see it happening already with the alcohol chart going down and the cannabis going up. I know it feels time moves so slowly right before a big catalyst. And I feel like that's what people are experiencing right now. I don't know,
right, man.
Buy and hold a lot of things for 20 years and it pays off. So
I keep bringing this up before about the whole Canadian landscape and how we wanted a quick buck. I think we've moved on from that because let's face it, there's still a lot of people here and they want things to happen. Who doesn't? And I think, if you look at different industries, probably through time, this is probably the same sentiment that happened. They see upside potential, get excited about it. And I think we're fine. But to Dan's point, there's some compelling stuff. What are some big takeaways this week? We got Governor DeSantis, whether you like it or not. He's actually helping the industry by not him directly, but with what he's doing is drawing attention towards this. We have Fox News that's basically, highlighting cannabis. They're going to ride that train leading up to the election. And then on top of that, too, you've got rescheduling coming up, leading up to the election as well. So these are big moments that we've got to stop, pause, and where were we 3 years ago? And if we were having these conversations, we'd get pretty excited. But these are all steps in the right direction. But as you said, Guap, we're all going to be rewarded in the end. Otherwise, why are we here? Why are we here?
Check out how nice my van is going to be when I'm touring national parks in 2030. That's my plan. Right? That's my time horizon.
Christopher Brady writes, I wouldn't trust the weather report from Fox News. I don't care about what opinion, yes or no. It's the idea that they brought up the topic to an audience. That's it. Whether you believe it or not, I don't give a shit.
2 parts series. Check out the Fox thing. I was talking right to boomers. And it was a great to see. Look at recent history, like .com boom and bust, right?
Yes.
Did the internet go away?
No.
Is e-commerce still a thing? These trends are bigger than just what happens month to month, year to year. And so to think that cannabis is going away and to come to that conclusion now is a bit silly.
I like to think I'm the future, but I'm going to be 48 in 2 months. Suddenly, when I walk around and I see 21-year-olds and they're saying, "Hey, old man," and I'm like, got a little bit of gray hair, and suddenly you're not the young guy on the block. When I look at these people and like, that are a lot younger, look at their consuming habits, what they're interested in. Legal age, alcohol trends are way down, and different ways of consuming, say, cannabis or vaping or anything like that. Even the way you consume cannabis now, it's not the typical pre-roll where you feel like you're stinking up a room. We had this conversation with David Klein yesterday. Like, it's changing, and think of how much it'll continue to change in the years to come. I did want to mention to Emilio, we have reached out to Jim Morgan's team, so we hope to have him on the next little bit. But that is an unbelievable guest that we are trying to land as well. Glad you liked the coverage that we provided for MaryMed, and as well Sunday night. I can't emphasize on this enough. For all of you people that jump on our live stream, you've got to watch the Small Cap Sunday podcast. Bill McNarlin, our analyst and lead financial writer, this guy does, I think, 30 to 40 hours of research per week, trying to peel small cap companies with huge upside potential. Not investment advice, but we're basically shedding some light on some stocks that you're unaware of. And he's got some great stories there. And as usual, through that list, we always include at least one cannabis stock, because I know you guys all love that. So make sure Sunday night, 8 o'clock, you log on to that. Subscribe to the Dales Report baked in newsletter by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we appreciate, obviously, support. So smash that like button, share this video with your network, and let's keep the good times rolling, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to go. The High Tide earnings call started at 11:30. Good thing they have that archived. I'm going to go listen to that.
All right.
And everyone have a great weekend out there.
Arns, cue that music back up one last second as we close it down. For Anthony Varrell, who's not with us, and Guap, I'm Shad Dales from TDR. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. All right.
Expand your time horizons.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.